Ready? Come on, you lot. Go on then.
Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white, the imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white, the imps are here to stay.
Hello and welcome to something a little bit different today due to unforeseen circumstances. Ben is not able to be with us, so I've lost his technical expertise in terms of doing the podcast. So what we're actually going to do is just do a quick video for as a Portsmouth preview today. Not going to cover the Ipswich game. I've done that in a blog. You can check out the blog. I'll put links elsewhere on the page for that if you still want to read about Ipswich. But we move on, we press on, and we're going to have a look at Portsmouth. Going to break it down a little bit, make it a little bit more entertaining. So we're going to look at their tactics, we're going to look at their key players, we're going to look at players I feel will be our key players, look at previous form, and we'll have a look, that's their recent form, and we'll have a look at previous meetings as well, of which probably only one really matters. But there'll be a bit of nostalgia in there for you. And I might break it up with some fancy graphics as well. And as the video goes on, I might do something about me Barnet, so we'll see. So shall we crack on with the show? Now, I keep hearing about this terrific run of form that Portsmouth have been on, and to be fair, yeah, they've not had a bad run when you look at it. I think they've won the last 6 on the bounce. They've won 8 of 10. So it looks pretty impressive in that context. But if you start breaking it down a little bit, in actual fact, you can always deconstruct form, I feel. The FA Cup win against Barnsley, that's fantastic. But I think you've got to take FA Cup wins, not with a pinch of salt as such, but look at us when we came off the back of beating Burnley, and I think we then went and lost at Boreham Wood. We came off the back of... No, Burnley was beating North Ferriby 1-0 and it wasn't convincing. So FA Cup form and league form don't always cross over. A couple of the other wins that they've had, 2-1 against Scunthorpe in the Football League Trophy, league below them. 2-1 against Walsall in the Football League Trophy, league below them. In the FA Cup, they won away at Fleetwood, a decent result, but it's the Cup again. So looking at their league fixtures, they beat Bolton 1-0. They beat Wimbledon 2-1 at home. They're wins, you've got to win those games. But, you know, when we go to Bolton, we'll expect to be winning. When Wimbledon come to us, we'll be expected to be winning. They went and drew at Gillingham. They lost 3-1 to MK Dons. And their other two, they beat Portsmouth, they beat Wickham 2-0 and Ipswich 1-0. Which again, Wickham are in free fall, Ipswich, it's neither here nor there, and they lost 4-1 at Accrington. Away fixtures are interesting me, losing 4-1 at Accrington, losing 3-1 at MK Dons, drawing 1-1 with Gillingham. In fact, of the last 11 games, there's only 3 they haven't won, and all 3 were away from home. And when they also went away from home, 1-0 against Bolton, not entirely convincing. I'm not going to count the Football League Trophy ties either. So, yes, they're on a good run of form, but I don't think that we should be we shouldn't be looking at it from an angle of fear. We shouldn't be daunted at all, I don't think, by this fixture. They're not fantastic away from home. When they do get challenged away from home, they do seem to crumble a little. I'm not saying that it's going to be straightforward. They have had some good wins away from home. They beat Rochdale 3-0, for instance. Was their last league win, I believe, away from home, other than Bolton. So yeah, they're a decent side. They are on a good run. They are on a good run of form. But when you look at league fixtures, of the last 4, they've won 2, drawn 1, and lost 1, which isn't entirely different to our own run of form. So it's quite important just to always keep that in context. Again, our run of form is 1-2, lost 1, drawn 1. So in actual fact, going into it, we're in a similar run of form over 4 games. And form is something I don't always tend to put a lot of stock in either, to be honest. It's nice to be in good form, and if you are winning, it can be a habit. But at the same time, you can make the form table say anything you want, really, especially when you're putting cup games and things in there as well. So. Now looking at Portsmouth's lineup, they play a 4-2-3-1, very similar to the lineup that we played last season. They tend to, they've been operating this now for several years, and Kenny Jackett has come in for some stick, sometimes for being negative. Portsmouth do often go out to avoid defeat before they look to win a game, and I think we saw that in our game with them earlier in the season, where I don't think they were entirely convincing. There's been a bit of a shock in recent weeks. Alex Bass has come in goal in place of Craig McElvery. Their former goalkeeper McElvery, which I believe I'm pronouncing correctly, he was a target for Rangers. And when he dropped to the bench, it was quite a shock. Arguably been one of the best goalkeepers at this level for a while. But Alex Bass has come in and been given his opportunity. He was in goal at the weekend. He was in goal when they played Scunthorpe and Bolton, I think, as well. So he's had 3 games, 3 wins, no reason to drop him. At right back, they've got Birmingham City loanee Steve Seddon, who was on loan at Wimbledon last year and played a key part in them staying up. At right back, they've got a kid called James Bolton, who's likely to start. He's former Shrewsbury, struggled a little bit at the beginning of the season, I think, with injury. But again, 2 steady fullbacks. Not what you would class as wing-backs. They're not going to be looking at those 2 to overlap for the width. They will get wide, they will get forward, they'll support the 2 on the side of the 3 behind the central striker. But they're not the wing-backs in the traditional sense, certainly not as we saw with Ipswich. On the left side, I don't think you're going to see Seddon quite as far forward as we saw Luke Garbutt at the weekend. Central midfield's interesting. Tom Naylor, he's an old hand at this level. Really good midfielder, been at Burton Albion, I believe, before, and helps keep things ticking over. And next to him, they've got a player that they've just brought in, ironically from Barnsley, who they knocked out the FA Cup, called Cameron McGeehan. A player I really like, McGeehan. Former Chelsea youngster. Fans of Football Manager may well have signed him at some point. He's been at Luton Town, he's been at Cambridge, he helped Barnsley get promoted. He's the type of player that likes to get on the ball in the middle of the park. He's not a spoiler, he's a passer, he's a creator. I think he adds a slightly different dimension to their midfield, which will be interesting to see how that dynamic pans out over the course of the next few games. He's relatively new, he's signed in this transfer window. They do have a great trio up ahead of him. Again, if they go with a similar sort of starting 11 to what they're used to. Ronan Curtis on the left, constantly linked with championship sides. 11 goals last season. Republic of Ireland international, came over beginning of last season. Really, really good player. Heartbreakingly for him, missed the Checkatrade Trophy final at the end of last season because on his way to a game in high winds, he went to close his door, he blew shot on his finger and crushed the end of his finger. So he missed out on playing at Wembley. Quality player. Had he been fit at the tail end of last season, I think they might have been more of a threat in the playoffs. They went out to Sunderland in the semi-final. Just behind them in the 10 role, this has been, I think, a more recent development, but John Marquis has been playing. Fans of lower league will know who John Marquis is. Scored a shed load of goals for Doncaster. Massive player for them last season. Signed for around £1 million, possibly 1.5 in the summer for Portsmouth. Really good player at this level. Surprised to see him in the 10 role. This is the sort of time where you would imagine that Portsmouth might actually have wanted to go 4-4-2 and put Marquis alongside the centre forward who they're playing. And then on the right wing, they've got Marcus Harness, who was probably their most creative player at their place at the beginning of the season. Another former Burton player and another really good footballer. Just excuse me, there's a mosquito flown in here, so we will have him. Can you see that? Horrible little bastard. Up front, Ellis Harrison, former Bristol Rovers striker, big burly, probably more, not big and burly rather, he's probably more suited occasionally to the 10 role. He's got a bit of physical strength to him, but he's quick as well. He's a Johnny Kindy style player, I would say. He's not got lots of goals for them this season, I don't think. I'll have a look at that now. That's the beauty of recording a live video. So he's got 4 goals for them in 22 appearances. But other than Ronan Curtis, who's got 10 league goals, they don't have a lot of scorers. Marquis has got 5, Harness has got 4, Harrison's got 4, and Ben Close, who's not likely to play, has got 3. So they don't have loads of goals in them, even though they've got this wonderful kind of attacking trio going on. And I think that's down to the fact they go out and try not to get beat. which is what I would expect tomorrow. I didn't mention the centre of defence. I've come back to that particularly. I've left it to the end because obviously there's a big name here that's going to be mentioned. It's not Christian Burgess, who plays on the right hand side. Obviously it's Mr. Raggett. Sean Raggett hasn't entirely endeared himself to Portsmouth fans, I don't think. He hasn't. He's not a pariah. He's not lambasted for anything, but he's not a fan favourite like I would expect him to be. I think that there's a few fans that think he's got an error in him. He can be a little bit languid. But this is a big moment for us. You know, we haven't had Sean Raggett back at Sincilbank since the Forest Green game where he waved us all goodbye. Sean doesn't strike me as the emotional type. He's not going to let the situation get on top of him. He was, you know, whenever I used to speak to the previous manager, he would always say Sean Raggett's cut from a different cloth. He's very focused. He knows exactly where he's going, up, 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 up. So he's going to come and have a job to do tomorrow. But it is going to be nice to see Rags back at the bank because he was a wonderful servant for this football club over 18 months. And although we won't want him to get the rub of the green tomorrow, once the game's finished, I'm sure we'll all be wishing him all the best. On to previous meetings between the two sides now. Obviously we met earlier in the season in October and lost 1-0 thanks to John Marquis' goal, but I felt, to be honest, that we were probably worthy of a win that day, or at least a draw that day. I thought yesterday took the lead, we were probably the better side. So, but that's harsh. But other than that, we haven't regularly met them, or indeed met them at all since the early 80s and late 70s. In 82-83, they won the old Division 3. They beat us 3-0 at Sincilbank in February 83, which was obviously after the kind of Christmas collapse. And before that, in November 82, they actually beat us 4-1 at their place. Derek Bell scored for us, so Derek Bell's actually the last scorer, the last Lincoln City scorer against Portsmouth in 1982, so 37 years ago. So been a long while. The last scorer for Lincoln at Sincilbank was the year before. We drew 1-1 with them in 81-82, and that was Derek Bell as well. And we drew 1-1 away with them that season on the opening day. That was on the 29th of August, which tells you how football's changed, 3-4 weeks later than usual. So that kind of just also goes into that fixture pile-up talk about how football's changed. We kick off a lot earlier now. Steve Cammack scored the goal for us that day. Going back further, 79-80 was actually the last time we registered a win against Portsmouth. That was 1-0 at our place in March 1980, courtesy of a Phil Turner goal. But we were well thumped at Fratton Park again, 4-0. You have to go back to 77-78 for the last time we actually did the double over Portsmouth. We won 1-0 at our place, courtesy of a player called Alan Jones, who up until me shooting this segment I wasn't actually aware existed. I think he scored 4 goals for Lincoln in 24 appearances in one season. And we won 2-0 away at Portsmouth in September 77, thanks to Peter Graham and an own goal. Our head-to-head versus Portsmouth, we have won 5 games against them in the league, including those kind of 3 victories in the 70s and another one in 76-77 as well. They've beaten us 7 times in the league, so they've got the edge, and 5 of the games have been draws. And in the FA Cup, there've just been 2 fixtures, and they have beaten us both times. There's an odd number, obviously, at the minute: 5 wins, 5 draws, and 7 defeats, because we've still got to get today's or tomorrow's game in. So, it's not a fixture that we've seen regularly, and only fans of kind of 50 years old or more will consider this the sort of game that we used to see at one point. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. So that's Portsmouth. That's their form, their team, their lineup, the previous meetings. So usually on the podcast, I finish with a little bit of look at our side and how I expect us to line up, and what I expect the key areas to be. Excuse me. So obviously I expect Josh Vickers in goal. I know he made what people construe to be an error on Saturday. But I think overall Josh is in credit with us. I think he's had some really impressive performances of late. He's pulled some good saves out of the bag. There was particularly a double save against Blackpool, which I think, even though was given as offside, was reactive and instinctive. I think as a whole we've got to cut down on the silly set pieces. Michael Appleton said it in his press conference: we can't give silly free kicks away. And that's not one person. You can't point to one person who did one free kick at the weekend and say he's to blame. We've been giving silly free kicks away all season, I think, and we've been susceptible from set pieces all season as well. You know, goals against us have either been long range thunderbolts or set pieces or errors that we've gifted. We very rarely give a standard good quality goal away in open play. Certainly not over the last few weeks anyway. I think it'll be standard again. You're going to have Max Melbourne and Neil Eardley as fullbacks with Kean and Jason Shackle at centre half. I think Kean's been one of our best players recently in terms of when the ball's coming at him, but he's obviously part of a defence that isn't dealing particularly well with set pieces. But Kean's got a big future obviously with the club. I think he's one of the players from the previous manager's regime that we're likely to see play a significant role going forward into next season, or I'd certainly hope so. I would expect, and this is kind of injury dependent, but I would expect Harry and George Grant on the flanks. Unless Michael decides to go with Zach El-Bizedi to give him his first start, he may well do. So that might be an issue for Harry. Harry wasn't great against Ipswich. He had a good game against Blackpool. He's up and down. When you've got Harry on form, I think you've got arguably one of the best wingers that we've seen at the club in a long, long while. When he's not on form, it's a little bit harder to call. Now, given that they're playing the 4-2-3-1, I don't think it's as restrictive on our wide players as Ipswich's formation was at the weekend. So personally, I would expect to see Harry Anderson and George Grant on either flank. The midfield dynamic's going to be really interesting. It's key that we win this midfield battle. It's absolutely key. It's where it could be won and lost. They have got McGeehan, who is a fantastic ball player. They've got Tom Naylor, who's very, very experienced at this level. For me, I think we go with Morrell and Connor Coventry tomorrow. I think you're asking Joe Morrell to kind of play what I would call the old Michael O'Connor role. In that I know it's a double, as I call it, it's double sixes sat in front of the back four. But when you're playing a 4-4-2, as we are doing at the moment, you also need to have that natural transition where one kind of comes forward a little bit more to plug the gap behind the central two, which both Coventry and Morrell can do. Coventry's very, very good on the ball. My only fear tomorrow is this midfield battle because they've got such experience in there, you know, real good strength. McGeehan has settled in really, really quickly. If Connor Coventry raises his game to the level that we expect him to be at, and which we know we can get to from what we've been told, and Joe Morrell's on form, there's no reason why we can't win that midfield battle. But it's key. We lost it on Saturday, and that's why we lost the game, in my opinion. Aside from the fact we gave them a goal, we could have lost the midfield battle and probably ended up drawing the game, but we didn't win it because we didn't control the ball well enough in those key areas. And up front, I think it's obvious, it's John Jules and Tyler Walker again. Unless, again, Michael feels that in order to win the midfield battle, he's going to put somebody who's a little bit more robust in there, more of a target man in order to frustrate them for the first 30-35 minutes. Then he goes with Tom Hopper and potentially Tyler Walker ahead of him. And Tom perhaps just drops back in a little bit more and gives us almost to a 4-5-1, which we were playing earlier in the season. And I think Tom's clever enough, from what I understand, to do that. Speaking to some Southend fans that I know, he's not a 20 goal a season striker, but he's the striker that's going to allow another person to score 20 goals a season and let us be more compact further and deeper down the field. So there might be a shout for Tom Hopper to start. There might be a shout for Zach El-Bizedi to start. There may even be a call for Connor Coventry to start. They're the three players that came on Saturday. So they're the three players that are likely to drop in. And the three that are likely to drop out are the three that came off, I think, on Saturday. And Harry Anderson, Tayan Eden and Tyrese John Jules. So anyway, that's how I think the game will go. That's all the essential information I think that you need. The podcast will be hopefully back up and running on Thursday, fingers crossed. We may record Wednesday for Thursday. We may record Thursday for Friday. If there are any unforeseen circumstances, then we'll work through those at the moment. But from me and from Ben in spirit, hope you enjoyed this hat fest of a video, and I will obviously see you again soon. Cheerio.
Are you ready? Come on, you lot. Go on in.
Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white, the imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight delight for the red and white. We enter